Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mac, boys and girls. In this first installment of the Great Awakening trilogy, we are 1 down and 2 to go. We now have Judge Kavanaugh being confirmed as Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, and there are many, many happy faces up on Capitol Hill today. Others maybe not so much. However, I've got reaction from Ruth sooner or later Bader Ginsburg, and here she is. Whoa, now Dozy McGee over here. Thought we were gonna lose her. There she blows. All right, well, I am just joking. Here is some real footage here of Justice Kavanaugh being sworn in. And here we are witnessing the entrance proceedings. There's Clarence Thomas, John Roberts, Ruth Ginsburg. Look at that. Boy, she must be cold. She got them big old gloves on. She's ready to toss some ice. There you go. Got Tom Fitton back there, Fitton to watch Kavanaugh's. What's up? Yeah, he's ready to go. Everyone's ready to go. You see John Roberts here and Clarence Thomas. They're joking around. He's like, yeah. I said, hey, what do you feel about Kavanaugh to Ruth? And she was like, who the hell are you? Ruth Ginsburg there looking like someone stole her pony. And there we go. There's the family coming in. Everybody stands up. Now watch what happens here. You'll see Ruth. She needs a little help to get up there, of course. And you see Clarence Thomas clapping hard. It's about to knock her out with a left right there. So Ginsburg gets right back down. Oh, she is not ready for this kind of day right here at all. All right, let's get to some Q post. 2366, 13 minutes after the hour of 11. Q takes us back to the September 23rd post, where Q was basically essentially teaching us what the red line was going to be with this FISA issue. D-class of FISA equals Rod Roe self-incrimination. Rod Roe is in charge of D-class. Due to massive conflict of interest, IG Horowitz was tasked to final review. Okay, so we know that once Kavanaugh was in place, D-class is next, and basically D-class and Rod Roe hitting the dough is the same thing, right? You can't have one without the other. Due to massive conflict of interest, IG Horowitz was tasked to final review. So this is where we're going to start seeing Huber and Horowitz enter the picture. That was to prevent the left from endangering sources and methods, plus Mueller interference narrative. Yeah, look, this whole thing has been a soup sandwich, right? This whole investigation. And anything they're going to throw out that way is simply just going to be kind of a dog and pony show while we all ignore the real point. Well, it's all going to come out now. POTUS will not be baited to fire when the release itself will force resignation/termination of Rod Roe. Let me read that again. POTUS will not be baited to fire when the release itself will force resignation/termination of Rod Roe. Like I said, you can't have one without the other. So the left is going to try and bait POTUS into firing Rod Rosenstein because they will be able to somehow spin that into some sort of political hit job. When the fact of the matter is, this Whopper and cheese has got Rod Roe all over it, right? And we are going to see that once it's declassed, Rod Roe will be forced to resign. But we won't force him. It will just simply be public court of opinion, or it'll be essentially his duty to go ahead and resign. Now, UK, Australia, plus others must learn the true definition of ally. You know, we're talking to everybody, really. We're talking about China. We're talking about Russia. We're talking a lot of countries here that were taking advantage of this. Rod Roe forced from signing new FISA. So that means he's not going to be able to do any of that anymore. All signers are currently under grand jury. Okay, so who are our signers? We had some judges. We had Rod Rosenstein. We had Comey. We had McCabe. Was Peter Strzok one of them? Was Sally Yates, right? McCabe memos. New York Times Rod Roe article prove the rats are panicking. Yeah, they sent this out as sort of another reason to try and bait POTUS into firing him, saying that Rod Roe wore a wire. Now, I don't know if he did or not. That's the story. And I have a feeling we're going to start getting into the real nitty-gritty details of what happened here. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit with Rod Roe and the president. But That was basically what they were trying to do. Comey, McCabe didn't have their story straight when it came to their testimony, so they needed to come up with another way to look like they were on the same page. Enter throwing the bus driver under the bus. Well, the rats are panicking. 2018 will be glorious. Prepare for Sky is Falling week. That was back September 23rd, and Q adds on. But of course, Anons already knew POTUS would not be baited to fire. Think red line. Well, firing Rod Rosenstein is the red line, and they were probably going to pull out some really big, dirty political trick if that were the case. It doesn't have to be the case. Rod Rowe is going to go on his own volition. So this is very, very interesting. Now let me play you a little bit of what President Trump had to say.
Look, I'm traveling with Rod. I didn't know Rod before, but I've gotten to know him, and I get along very well with him.
Well, that's odd because back in post 2153, we saw panic in D.C. Rod Rowe requests meeting with POTUS decline. That was back on September 11th. And on September 17th, post 2200, we saw it again. Panic in D.C. Rod Rowe requests second meeting with POTUS declined. And now the president and Rod Rowe are flying to Florida together. Well, it's a curious setting indeed. I have a feeling that Trump wanted to have a captive audience. I'm sure whatever they wanted to discuss needed to be kept private. They probably didn't want any kind of journalistic meddling going on, but it is definitely interesting, and I have a feeling foreseen. Now, this is a great graphic from an Anon. I know it's a little bit blurry, but this is the best I can do. Now, I want to direct your attention down to the bottom left. And this is part of the Q clock here. If you're new to QAnon, the Q clock is essentially a series of dates arranged like a clock by the second. And then it ends up going on the these outer rings here to minutes and days and so on and so forth. Now I'm going to direct your attention to this first circle right here, dated 6/10, the one in pink there. Okay, that's June 10th. And here's the corresponding Q post on the right, post 1443. Fly, Rod Rowe, fly. And then we've got that weird looking, almost looks like a satellite, doesn't it? The way it's kind of arranged. Failure per White House instruction agreement, declass public. 3, and I think they were talking about 3 different versions of the FISA. EO dated official, being executive order. IG redactions, heavy plus remove. Hussein, White House, call, tarmac, Bill Clinton, Loretta Lynch, and then we've got Rod Rowe outside of the box here. And again, that satellite thing, was he listening in on this discussion between Bill Clinton and Aunt Loretta on the tarmac? James Comey, number 2, be Andrew McCabe, Loretta Lynch, Aunt Loretta. Could that be Bill Priestapps, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page? And then again, looks like we've got some evidence or whatnot in regards to their 302s, their text, and the tarmac meeting. FBI, DOJ, operative insertions, UK, SIS being Senior Intelligence Service, dark to light. Shall we play a game? And as you can see over here on the top left, we see now on October 8th, which is this second pink circle, which kind of corresponds, everything kind of corresponds in a line. And you'll see it's like 5 minutes after everything kind of corresponds in a line. And then again, on the opposite side of the clock, for those of you who are new to Q, this doesn't show the whole graphic here, but we see that these dates correspond. So it looks like maybe this is in relation to that. Could it be in relation to Rod Rosenstein being privy to what was going on the tarmac? Post 2367, 44 minutes after the hour of 11 a.m. Q takes us back to September 28th, talking about the Democrat playbook for the midterm elections. And they knew that the Kavanaugh confirmation was going to go through. So what was the next move? They're going to try to impeach. And that's exactly what we see here on this Fox News link. And this is talking about, I had it all queued up for you there. Dems wage war on Kavanaugh court. New battles over legitimacy, impeachment, recusal. The narrow confirmation of now Justice Brett Kavanaugh over the weekend marked a major political victory for President Trump and the beginning of a new battle for Democrats, who are now shifting their message to threaten possible impeachment against the newest high court justice and question the legitimacy of the Supreme Court itself. All right, so let me get this straight. These people were willing to kill to get their people on the highest court in the land. And we know, if you've been following QAnon, we know that Aunt Loretta Lynch was likely promised a seat on that Supreme Court at some point, probably when Ginsburg would step down. And we know that because of the meeting on the tarmac. Now, they fought tooth and nail over the last few weeks to try and keep this Kavanaugh off of this court. And now that he's finally there, if they can't impeach him, they're going to try and basically question the legitimacy of the court itself.
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
Yeah, exactly. What do you want? But of course, Anon's already knew that. We already knew this because Q posted it on September 28th, and we've already had a really good idea of this anyway. We knew this was going to be what they were going to do. They were going to fail. Think herd, sheep. Think 2/3 Senate vote required to impeach. Yeah, if you couldn't get enough votes to keep him from getting on there in the first place, having enough votes to impeach is going to be impossible. Well, these people are sheep at this point. Now, it's funny because if you've been following QAnon for a while, you know that lots and lots of people have called us sheep, although it seems that we're the ones that keep getting proven right, a la this September 28th post, right? Meanwhile, you've got Alyssa Milano over there, mic checking, and you've got these handlers handling these protesters, and it's just the sickest thing you've ever seen, haven't you? I posted some of this on my Twitter, but some of these guys will just lead these nonsensical chants, and you can just see the life is sucked out of their faces. They realize that they're losing. And this is really going to force any kind of reasonable Democrat to really think about how they want to vote, number one. But I think moving forward for the Democratic Party, if they ever want to be able to survive this, they are going to have a massive reform. So it's good things, lots and lots of winning. Good luck trying to do that impeachment thing. I think you're going to have a better time trying to prove Russia. Let's move on. Post 2368. 39 minutes after the hour of 12, Q gives us this Hill article right here, and it's entitled FBI Smoking Gun Redactions Protected Political Embarrassment, Not National Security. To declassify or not to declassify? That is the question when it comes to the FBI's original evidence in the Russia collusion case. The DOJ and the FBI have tried to thwart President Trump on releasing the evidence, suggesting it will harm national security, make allies less willing to cooperate, or even leave him vulnerable to accusations that he is trying to obstruct the end of the Russia probe. I see. So they're just doing this for our own good. Before you judge the DOJ and FBI's arguments, which are similar to those offered to stop the release of information in other major episodes of American history from the Bay of Pigs to 9/11, consider footnote 43 on page 57 of Chapter 3 of the House Intelligence Committee's report earlier this year on Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. Until this past week, the footnote really had garnered no public intrigue, in part because the U.S. intelligence community blacked out the vast majority of its verbiage in the name of national security before the report was made public. Okay. So we're talking about all these redactions, and it kind of half implies that it's for our own safety, right? And then it goes on to talk about James Baker, who, remember, he gave his testimony in an unclassified setting. So I would assume we're going to be able to kind of understand what his testimony was. We're going to get a lot of that information. Now, I want to talk about this footnote 43 real quick. So we can now say with some authority that the earlier redaction in footnote 43 was done in the name of a national security concern that did not exist. And then it kind of sums it up here. There is now a concrete storyline backed by irrefutable evidence. The FBI allowed itself to take political opposition research created by one party to defeat another in an election, treated it like an actionable intelligence, presented it to the court as substantiated, and then used it to justify spying on an advisor for the campaign of that party's duly chosen nominee for president in the final days of a presidential election. Something that I think that we all understand very clearly, right? Okay. So, Q says, why not? If true, Democrats do not want to declass to prove POTUS was colluding with Russia. Yeah, if you're going to bang the war drums of Russia, don't you want to show your base that it's true? Don't you want them demanding the declass? Maybe we should encourage them to demand the declass. Or maybe we should fake like, oh no, please, we don't want to declass it. So maybe they'll want to then. Why are Dems opposed to declass if what they say is true? Good question. Good question. I haven't gotten a straight answer from one yet. Declass would prove evidence versus POTUS to obtain FISA warrant. Why the block? Well, that's exactly why the block, because the declass would prove evidence versus POTUS to obtain the FISA warrant. We know that this was all a hoax. Define projection. See article above, redactions made to protect exposing the real truth. Yeah, now they're saying it's to protect national security when the fact of the matter, it is just protecting their own bums, right? Logical thinking. McCabe memos was a source As per the New York Times Rod Roe Wire article, Sessions subpoena, McCabe memos, delivery to House, Baker testimony. House, what was learned? Well, we learned that they were in contact with this Sussman guy from the Democratic Party who was working with Clinton, right? Then we have D, next up, Rod Roe testimony. So maybe that's what they were discussing on the helicopter there. Maybe they were discussing the upcoming testimony to the House, locked and loaded. And once we see Rod Roe go down, we know the bus has to go down with it. So this should be a very, very exciting theater, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to the next post. Post 2369, 49 minutes after the hour of 12. Q takes us back to January. The title of this picture has a GS. I'm assuming it's George Soros, and then a series of numbers. U.S. taxpayers are paying for it all. Paris Accord equals scam. Trillions. Red Cross equals scam. Billions. Foreign aid equals scam. Trillions. War equals scam. Trillions. On and on and on. Who audits where the money actually goes? Yeah, good question. I'd still like to know where all those billions of dollars were going before 9/11. And of course, we all know at this point that the Red Cross is a massive, massive scam. All this money was going to all the deep state pockets. Clinton Foundation, John McCain Foundation, foundations, humanitarian aid, humanitarian being the key word, right? Who actually receives the money? They do, not the people that they're ever trying to help. And Haiti is a perfect example. The U.S. taxpayer is funding the very people we are engaged in taking down. Exactly. Slush funds everywhere. Think George Soros pays for Antifa out of his own pocket? The hole is deep. Feels sick yet? And then Q gives us this Twitter link right here to Tom Fitton. Huge Soros find. Docs show Soros operation and State Department working hand in glove with your tax dollars. Does the heavy lifting in court to get answers. And that takes you over here. Judicial Watch. New documents show State Department and USAID working with Soros Group to channel money to mercenary army of far-left activists in Albania. Judicial Watch today released 49 pages of new documents obtained from the U.S. Department of State about U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, funding for George Soros' left-wing nonprofit organizations in Albania. The documents deal primarily with the activities of Soros' top operative in Albania, Andrei Dobrushi, the director of Open Society Foundation Albania, who was actively engaged in channeling funding to what Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban calls Soros' mercenary army. The document shows U.S. grant money flowing through non-governmental organizations that profess to promote civil society, while in fact attacking traditional pro-American groups, governments, and policies. Okay, well, once again, massive score for Tom Fitton. I will leave this link here for you. This is some interesting stuff, and it just shows more and more Soros involvement. And there's one person that really just needs to go away at this point. It is this Soros, but of course, Anons already knew this. Knowledge is power. And you know, once that money runs dry, you're not going to have those protesters anymore. And this is what happens to you, Soros.
George Soros, where's my money? George Soros, where's my money? George Soros, where's my...
Charming group, aren't they? 2370, 53 minutes after the hour of 12. This is a link from Q's previous post just yesterday. This was Devin Nunes talking to Maria Bartiromo. This one right here, Devin Nunes on Russia probe and FISA abuse. And I played this a little bit for you yesterday. And this was essentially talking about these new quote unquote bombshells about this guy Sussman, who worked for the DNC. And Nunes was also talking a little bit about Baker's testimony. And we got a little cameo from Jacketless Jim Jordan. Q says 113,000 plus suppressed new views in less than 24 hours. Your voice is spreading. Q. Well, I can completely understand that. I think anybody who covers QAnon knows exactly what it's like to be suppressed. I'm done like that daily. If you follow my views down below, a lot of you guys make comments and they're hilarious. And sometimes I screenshot those and I post them on Twitter. Sometimes I had like 90 something likes and 0 views. I mean, it's incredible. And anybody who covers QAnon knows exactly what I'm talking about. This is just something that we're dealing with. But the fact of the matter is that more and more people are tuning in every day. More and more people are getting it as the Democrats are driving the bus right off the cliff. Speaking of driving right off the cliff, let's move on to 2371, 12 minutes after the hour of 1 p.m. We get this here 10 minutes after Kavanaugh, and then now scratched out before Kavanaugh is confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. And we see Christine Ford. Oh my goodness, there she goes. She's falling off the bus. New Christine Blasey Ford has no further plans to pursue her sexual misconduct allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, according to her attorneys. Wow, it's not like we didn't see that coming, right? Then we get this Fox News, and this is an opinion piece here, right here from Peggy Grand. And we can kind of sum it up right here. Senator Dianne Feinstein has had a long and illustrious career with moments of great leadership, but in the recent Kavanaugh hearings, the California Democrat exposed herself as a standard partisan hack, leading the charge into an unnecessary and losing battle. As a result, she showed that she and her party are desperate and power hungry, but are not champions for women. Yeah, it's one thing to be able to use that title, but let's face it, women know. And I've gotten a lot of your comments from anyone who has survived any kind of abuse or anything like that. These people are not championing those kinds of rights, because as soon as we start throwing our justices under the bus like that, we throw our whole system under the bus, and it allows for a witch hunt, and it really undermines the true victims of abuse. And that's what makes this so sad. And I think that people who have been abused are starting to realize that, and they're catching on, and that is creating this massive walk away movement. And good for them. It's really great to see people standing up for themselves and telling the Democratic Party exactly what they can do with it. Let's move on. Post 2372, 27 minutes after the hour of 1 p.m. We get 3 links right here. Q says, do you believe in coincidences? First one is to the Wall Street Journal. Google exposed user data. Feared repercussions of disclosing to public. Google exposed the private data of hundreds of thousands of users of the Google Plus social network, and then opted not to disclose this issue this past spring, in part because of fears that doing so would draw regulatory scrutiny and cause reputational damage. Yeah, well, I guess that would kind of follow, wouldn't it? According to people briefed on the incident and documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Okay, so more proof that Google is exposing our data. Fantastic. Guess who's also doing it? Facebook. Security breach exposes accounts of 50 million users. Does it mean does this guy look more and more alien every single day? Facebook, already facing scrutiny over how it handles the private information of its users, said on Friday that an attack on its computer network had exposed the personal information of nearly 50 million users. Oh, it's another attack, huh? Just like the DNC got hacked, right? And here we are on TechCrunch. Twitter says bug may have exposed some direct messages to third-party developers, and this was from 3 weeks ago. So it looks like these kind of trickled in. Now, it looks to me like these tech companies who are clearly guilty of selling us all out, they are clearly the enemy, and they are obviously trying to rig this election now. They're going to try and claim that they've been hacked, but I really think that their honest attitude is that they're too big to fail. I think they're too big to fail. They think that if they just kind of casually wear us down, hence this, like I said, this was from a couple days ago. This was from September 28th. This was also from like 3 weeks ago. So they're kind of trickling in, sort of slowly browbeating us with what we already know. But because these things are such a massive convenience, it almost feels like we're going to get lackadaisical about trying to, really crush these entities, which is what needs to happen, and these people need to be measuring their selves. Do you believe in coincidences? Not at all. They know exactly what's up. They're getting ready for midterms. Data provided to Democratic Party affiliate to target voters for November 6th election. Win at all costs. Q, no, that's precisely what they want to do. They want to get as much data as they can. They want to squelch anybody who's a conservative. But what it's really doing is giving rise to more independent voices, not just conservative news platforms, social media platforms, but independent voices in general. People are really rising up and kind of creating their own stories, and that is a very exciting time. It's exciting to witness the rise of all this new media. It's fun to be a part of, to be quite honest with you. It's a little hairy, but it most certainly is exciting. Meanwhile, you've got President Trump. He is rallying all over the country, and he's selling out shows like he's the Rolling Stones. You got people waiting outside to try and get into these rallies. It is an exciting time, and they know the only way that they can kind of squash that voice is to just take us off of these platforms. Well, we can create our own, and I'm sure they're all going to shake down at some point. We're going to kind of, there's a lot right now, but there's a lot of independent social medias and alternate news stations, whatnot. But I think there will be some more popular ones that kind of rise to the top, and eventually the Facebooks of the world, and hopefully the Twitters, and the Jack Dorseys, and the Brins, and the Zuckerbergs of the world will all start to dissipate. I most certainly would love to see a reckoning with one Susan Wojcicki, CEO of YouTube. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Susan. What's up? What's the deal? Why are you beefing with me so much? Are we having a public beef? Are we beefing? All right. No cake for you. Stay away from that cake, woman. Well, Q says, do you believe in coincidences? Data provided to Democratic Party affiliate to target voters for November 6th election. Precisely. Win at all costs. Yeah, if they don't get this, this is essentially the end of the Democratic Party as we know it. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I don't want to see Democrats anymore, but I think that it is going to be a full house cleaning of the Democratic Party. And if they ever want to stay relevant, they are going to have to change their tune. Let's move on to 2373. 5 minutes after the hour of 2 p.m., we get this graphic right here called DP ad. Then we have a space RW4AE. Are the FISA redactions legal? D-class, well, no, they're not. And this is comparing that Hill article that we looked at earlier, talking about this footnote 43. That means the redaction of footnote 43 had more to do with political embarrassment than with the national security, and that should concern us all. And then Q is referencing that article back and forth with a couple of these Q posts that we talked about. Down below is from the President Executive Order 13526, and it says, it's pretty small there under Section 1.7, Part 2 there, prevent embarrassment to a person, organization, or agency. Well, the Section 1.7 is talking about, in no case shall information be classified, continue to be maintained as classified, or fail to be declassified in order to prevent embarrassment to a person, organization, or agency. Well, that's exactly what they are trying to do, and that is not legal. So now that all this is out of the way, Kavanaugh is a Supreme Court justice, and Rod Roe is at the end of a clock. It's time to declass. And although Rod Roe previously tried to speak to President Trump twice and was turned down, it looks like they had a little heart-to-heart on the plane. And now it looks like we're all set up for whoppery, bacony, cheesy goodness in the form of one declassed. So we shall see what happens. I have a feeling it's going to drop really, really soon. Sean Hannity was talking about something really big dropping tomorrow. So we'll have to see what happens. I have a feeling it will probably go through the standard procedure, being Sarah Carter, Sean Hannity, and Tom Fitton. That's how we're going to find out about all this stuff, as it should be. They do a lot of great work, but we're going to be seeing that in the next couple days. I wouldn't be surprised if Q drops us a little bit of those tidbits beforehand. We shall see, but I will keep you posted. Let's move on to 2374. We get this graphic at 45 minutes after the hour of 4 p.m., and the picture is entitled AQ5. Report: Google hid user data breach from public out of fear Congress would take action. That's sort of what we were just talking about, right? Then we get this Breitbart link here. Report: Google hid user data breach from public out of fear Congress would take action. That's essentially what Breitbart is talking about. It's just another one of these articles talking about why Google didn't want us to know that they were selling us all out. Google failed to inform its users about the exposure of their private data for fear of the news inviting regulation and comparisons to Facebook's Cambridge Analytica scandal, according to the Wall Street Journal. Well, it is the same thing. That's why you would probably get the comparisons, because it's the same thing. Google exposed the private data of hundreds of thousands of users of the Google Plus social network and then opted not to disclose the issue this past spring, in part because of fears that doing so would draw regulatory scrutiny and cause reputational damage. All right, well, we read that already from the Wall Street, right? Now Breitbart is just spitting it out again and letting us know what's up. Q adds on. Court order to preserve all data sent to Google. Think Google, Gmail, etc. Comms clean up, the more you know. Q. Well, if you've been following QAnon for a while, then let me rememberize you. And if you are rather new to QAnon, let me up to speed a page you that Eric Schmidt stepped down from Google's parent company Alphabet back in December. Would have been the day after the December 21st executive order from the president that was cutting off funds to anyone who was guilty of human rights abuse. Now, we also know that back some years back, Eric Schmidt went out to North Korea, likely to set up some Google servers. Why would he be doing that? That's because they wanted to skirt the NSA and have their own little deep state knucklehead network, right? Well, that is likely this comms cleanup that we're talking about. Now it looks like they're trying to get a court order to preserve all data sent to Google. Well, Google is going to reveal all those Gmail draft comms, which is going to implicate Comey, Yates, McCabe, pretty much the whole fam damnly, right? Think Google, Gmail, etc. And that's what Q is talking about. Remember, they were all communicating through these Gmail drafts, knucklehead1@gmail.com. And that's all probably getting cleaned up right now. So here's some live footage of the deep state going through their Gmails. Yep. But Q says we have it all. The more you know. Post 2375, 58 minutes after the hour of 10 p.m. Sally Yates. Yeah, and she's in kill brackets. After all, she was one of the FISA signer offers, right? Former Deputy Attorney General. She was one of those Barack Obama holdovers. And remember, anybody who was signing off on these FISAs are now being investigated by a grand jury. So all these names are going to come out of the woodwork. We're going to get Dana Buente, and then of course we're going to start working our way up, probably back to McCabe, and then eventually to James, nobody's homie, Comey. So it looks like now Sally Yates is going to get put out on Front Street. I'm not exactly sure how this will play out, but Q is giving us a preview of probably what's going to be coming in the next few days. Remember, like I just said, Hannity is supposed to be dropping some big bombs on tomorrow. So who knows, maybe Sally Yates is going to enter the narrative. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 8 hours or so, we're going to get some more Q posts, and we'll probably get some more clarity as to, you know, whatever the story is behind her signing. I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing about Dana Buente also. So we shall see. Those are your Q posts. Let me hit you up with a couple more things before I let you go. From the NewYorkPost.com, owner of limo company in horrific crash was an FBI informant. The owner of the limo company involved in an upstate crash that killed 20 people served as an FBI informant in a 2009 terror plot that targeted 2 synagogues in Riverdale and an Air National Guard base, the Post has learned. Federal Department of Transportation records show that Prestige Limousine Chauffeur Service, identified by Governor Andrew Cuomo as the company whose limo crashed on Saturday, is owned by Shahed Hussein of Ganzavort. Hussein's listed address is the same as in bankruptcy records for the Shahed Hussein who testified in Manhattan federal court at the 2010 trial of 4 men he recruited into an FBI sting operation after infiltrating a mosque in Newburgh. All 4 men, ringleader James Cromartie, David Williams, Auntie Williams, and Laguerre Payen, were convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Hussein's address is the Crest Inn Suites and Cottages, a string of 23 one-story attached units that manager Arnie Cornett, 60, described as transitional housing. Cornett identified the Crest Inn's owner as a man he only knows as Mr. Malik, who lives in Dubai. Hussein, 62, is also known as Malik, according to local news reports. Cornett said Hussein's son, whom he knows as Sean, formerly lived at the Crest Inn but recently moved to Albany and now just comes here to collect the rent and leaves. Cornett also believes that Prestige used to be here but relocated about 18 months ago. From what I'm told, they operated out of the back parking lot, he said. They don't operate here anymore. Cornett also said the state police came here last night. They asked me about the limo company, he said. They told me they wanted to find the owner. Okay, so this is strange, and I can understand that people, get killed in crashes, but this thing killed 20 people, and now it's coming out about this guy, Hussein, Shahed Hussein of Ganzavort. So it looks like the deep state is on a panic, a big, fat tear, and this looks like another casualty, and I have a feeling that more information about this Hussein is going to pop up over the next couple days. Okay, kids, those are your Q posts for today. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who already do that. I greatly appreciate it. You know how much I appreciate you. If you are new to my channel, please keep in mind that from time to time, you will be unclicked, unliked, and unsubscribed. That is the game that Susan Wojcicki, CEO of YouTube, likes to play with you. That's why we don't feed her any cake. All the links to my other channels, my Real.Video, my Gab, my BitChute, this as well, my Twitter at IPOT1776. That's at IPOT1776. All those links are down below, as well as my email and my Patreon link if you'd like to support the channel. All right, guys, thank you so much. And I have a feeling we're going to have a big day tomorrow. So get yourself prepared, stretch out your hammies, and let's get ready to get some wins. I am Sir Patrick Mack, and until next time, stay patriotic.